Live from the freezing snowland of Texas. That's our lead tonight. It is no longer freezing.
I know, no, it's
that
clickbait,
lead
guys.
is a lie.
It's clickbait. It's just people to click on.
It's clickbait lie. That's what it is. Oh, I'm embarrassed that the Greens would do such a thing.
Mainstream media.
Yes, Rhett is turning into the mainstream media. Shame, shame, shame. Did you let your son become like the mainstream media? Look at that!
Right.
Look at that lie of a lead that he gave everybody on Facebook tonight. Live from the freezing snowland of Texas. We are the thawed out snowland of Texas. Finally, what a preview of the apocalypse we have had in the last year. I definitely have a moth chasing me. I had that moment. What was the big apocalyptic show? Walking Dead. I only watched a few episodes of that, but I do like listening to books that are fiction apocalyptic books. And I had my moment driving home from Nevada with the boys. We were headed back. We had put off our being able to come home because we couldn't get across West Texas, and New Mexico was frozen. So anyway, we were trying to get back, and it was when and they may still be, gas may still, have you heard if it's been replenished yet, if the trucks were able to get up there? Anyway, bottom line is we stopped in town after town after town coming through West Texas trying to find gas and couldn't find gas. And it was just eerie. I've never experienced that. I know some of you that were of age in the 70s and the Jimmy Carter malaise days, you remember sitting in line forever to get gas. I don't know if you ever experienced just not being able to get it. Like every station had the little yellow, out of gas trash bag thing over the over the pumps. And it was just like everywhere I went, and I was just eerie, man. I felt like I was in the apocalypse. And we didn't think we were going to make it home. So Kara was literally loading up the truck with all of our gas cans that we had as backup for the generator, for the Snowmageddon, as somebody just put. And she was headed to West Texas to come help us get home. Anyway, we finally, Lord provided. I found I think the last gas station with the last pump of gas in Sonora, Texas, and managed to get gas. And it was just weird, man. I've never experienced that, and I think everybody's getting a taste with the no electricity, no gasoline, grocery store shelves empty. This is what it's like to live in a socialist country. This is what share the wealth policies that try to make everybody equal instead make everybody equally miserable. It destroys economies. And I'm not saying that's the cause for this week. I'm just saying it was kind of neat that God gave us this experience at a time when socialism is becoming very popular in our country. And I'm sure most of these, Marxist loving folks are not going to make the connection. They're not going to experience this and think, oh wow, yeah, this is what I've seen the pictures of from Russia and the Soviet Union and other places that implemented communism. They're not going to make that connection. You have to actually read history to make that connection. But we can make that connection, and we can teach them. And this is a great opportunity to say to your kids, look, this is not what Rick Green was saying. This is not a post-apocalyptic world. This is real world whenever you get away from free market economies, when you get away from letting the market decide how much gas should be in the pipeline to the gas station, how much toilet paper, how much chicken, how many steaks, all of that should be in the pipeline to the grocery store. Up until 2020, wasn't it amazing that every grocery store had just the right amount of toilet paper, had just the right amount of eggs and milk and orange juice and all of those things, and the gas station always had enough gasoline, and very rarely did you have to wait for the refuel truck to fill the tank at a gas station. I mean, once in a blue moon. Most of the time that was done late at night. Once in a blue moon you'd pull up on that. So you didn't even see these things happening. You just got to enjoy a free market economy and show up at the store, and whatever you wanted was at your fingertips. Whatever you needed for gasoline or anything else, a mechanic, it was always just right there for us. And so we have been very, very spoiled to a wonderful free market economy, even with all the mix of socialism in our country the last few decades and the attempts to regulate the market and frankly, hold down the market from being as efficient as it could have been and as prosperous as it could have been. Even with all of that, it was still pretty darn remarkable. And so this year, and especially for Texans this week, has been a fantastic lesson. And we need to actually find pictures. In fact, I'll try to do that. We need to take pictures of. In fact, I've seen really a meme before that said bread lines in socialism, and they're literally standing in lines around the building to get their one little piece of bread, and then bread lines in capitalism, and it's actually the bread factory, and you see all these big loaves of bread going through the bread lines, the factory, the what do you call that? Conveyor belts of the factory. So anyway, I mean, that comparison is what we have the opportunity right now to rubber stamp in our kids' minds and teach them, hey, if you don't want this to happen for your whole life, then you need to shun these AOC socialists and these Kamala Harris communists and say, we want free enterprise. We want what made America great in the first place. We want a Ronald Reagan style free enterprise system. So I see lots and lots of opportunity for us right here in front of us with what's going on. Let me start tonight with Rush Limbaugh. Man, I got to tell you, I don't know if you read some of you might have seen my post on the Patriot Academy page earlier today, but there would be no Patriot Academy if it wasn't for Rush Limbaugh. I grew up. I shouldn't say grew up. I was 19 when I discovered Rush Limbaugh, and it was like I found someone who could say what I was thinking, but much better than that. They could take what I was thinking and make sense of it. When stuff was rattling around in my head and I was trying to make sense of the world, it was without fail that I could tune into Rush and he would nail it and take all of the gobbledygook of the day and just somehow make it make sense and then leave me optimistic about the future, no matter how bad things were getting. And for me, I was let's see, so I was 19 and then Clinton got elected when I was 20. And so right when I'm really forming my worldview is the Clinton-Gore era. And I guess I was 22 when Clinton got elected. And he just had this ability to keep me optimistic about the world. When Clinton won, I thought it's all over. The world's going to fall apart. And in many ways, it was the beginning of the end for true free market, and it was the open door for socialism and for teaching communism to our kids. But all of that said, in that environment, Rush just always had a way of helping me make sense of the world. So I took what I learned from Rush, and really, I mean, it was like you could take my dad and Rush Limbaugh and Newt Gingrich and me reading Newt's books, reading Rush's two main books, listening to Rush every day, and what my dad had said to me all those years. And that was my political philosophy. I mean, it came from those things and Ronald Reagan's speeches. So I just want to say to everybody out there, take a moment and be thankful for the life of Rush Limbaugh, because God blessed our country with Rush Limbaugh. I really think communism would have taken over our nation, 2 decades ago if it hadn't been for Rush. He was the voice that kept that at bay. He equipped, conservative Republicans in Congress to have the backbone and the articulation of the issues. He equipped us as millions of patriots across the country to be able to converse at, the dinner parties and everything else. I mean, I can remember like it was yesterday at law school, my first year of law school, and I'd go to these events and just the haughty, arrogant intelligentsia of the upcoming youth, that always think they have. We all were like that at that age, right? We have all the answers, and those who came before us just didn't do it right, and we're going to do it so much better. And somehow Rush kept me from thinking like that. But man, it was like that talking to these other law students and how they would diss on the previous generation, and that always just seemed to me to be so ungrateful. for the blessings that we had as a late 80s, early 90s generation. And I just remember, and Curtis, I don't know if you're out there, if you ever see these or not, but I remember us being, just two of very few that were listening to Rush Limbaugh. And frankly, I think your conversations that first few weeks of law school might have been where I first really started listening to Rush. So anyway, I just remember that equipping me to be able to counter some of that arrogant intelligentsia, of the law school world. And so anyway, I just want to say thank you to Rush, and ask everybody else to thank God for Rush Limbaugh, because we wouldn't have Patriot Academy. You wouldn't have a conservative movement in America. They would have already pushed us to the side, and there would be no talk radio. All of those things. He pioneered that and kept us strong for all of those years. So I'm just thankful for him. If you're, if you're unfortunately one of those ungrateful, arrogant, selfish people that always thinks that the people that came before you somehow didn't do it right, and you don't realize the shoulders that you're standing on and that you're actually dissing on, because I've seen some of this, even National Review. I'm embarrassed for National Review and what it's become. I would hope that Bill Buckley would be embarrassed too, but they have just become so arrogant and so self-righteous. And to diss on Rush Limbaugh, I think I shared Dinesh D'Souza's video a couple hours ago. Watch his rumble on this, because he's exactly right. As much as we're also all beneficiaries of Buckley and in some way standing on his shoulders, Buckley was not near as influential, not even close to the influence of Rush Limbaugh. And it was because of the difference. And you know this, if you're a conservative or you read conservative books or you listen to conservative thinkers out there, there are certain conservatives that are just so arrogant that you don't want to learn from them. You're turned off by their arrogance and their haughty-taughtiness. And they try to talk over your head. They try to use the biggest words they can use, and they always got to show off their intelligence, I'll try not to insult too much. And people don't want to learn from that, so they have limited influence. And I'm not saying that's entirely Buckley. Look, Buckley was he was a brilliant man, but he wasn't great at bringing it down like a Milton Friedman would or a Rush Limbaugh to where the masses could understand, a country boy like me could understand. And so Rush ended up influencing so many more people and actually equipping us to win and equipping us to fight with a passion and a joy. And so I think Dinesh is exactly right. That's part of National Review's problem, and frankly, others in our movement as well. So I would just say to those of you that might be where I was when I started listening to Rush, or in those years where he was really helping me form my ideas, if you are dissing on the very shoulders upon which you stand, if you have said in the past that Patriot Academy was helpful to you to get where you are, then dissing on Rush Limbaugh is dissing on your own legacy and on your own the things that you have benefited from. And so don't be that guy. Don't be that gal. Don't be so disrespectful and spoiled that you would do that. So just pause for a moment and say, thank you, God, for Rush Limbaugh. Even if you didn't like everything he said, I think I pretty much liked everything he said. But even if you didn't like everything he said, or you took his satire to be offensive, which frankly his satire from 20 years ago is reality now. So the things he actually poked fun at and tried to give an extreme of what the left was hinting at, they're now doing. So he was actually a prophet in many of those ways too. So anyway, that's it for Rush. I am so thankful for him. I hope you will be as well. People have been asking me, who's going to replace Rush. I don't think anybody can replace Rush. I don't think there's any one person that can carry that torch. Rush was literally, if you look in a continuum, is that the right word, of time, Reagan was the torchbearer for the conservative movement, and he passed the torch to Rush. Whether he intentionally did that or not, Rush is definitely the one that took that mantle and ran with it for 30 years. I don't think there's anybody on the scene that's going to replace Rush or be that focal point of the conservative movement. Some might say Trump, but that's just too different. So here's what I think. I think that Rush's legacy and the torch has to be passed now from Rush to an entire generation. It has to be thousands of us that are out there in our small ways having influence. I don't think anybody will have quite the microphone that he had and be able to hold an audience the way that he did. He was a special, rare breed. So to all of my Patriot Academy grads, let's be part of that group that does carry on that torch. Whether you're a Constitution coach, whether you're a 25-year-old that went through Patriot Academy as a teenager or as a 25-year-old, or you're a military veteran that's been through Patriot Academy, for all the thousands of people out there that are Patriot Academy grads, I'm asking you to be the legacy of Rush Limbaugh, to accept that torch from him, and now you go out and say, what can I do to be that voice? Be optimistic, be joyful, be educated, be logical, but also be articulate in a way that people can understand. Don't try to talk over people's heads. Don't try to sound smarter than everybody else. Be someone that people want to learn from. And we need thousands of people like that. We don't need a figurehead, one person to be like that. We need an awful lot of people, and you can be that person at your church, in your community, in your home. That's why we're doing the whole Constitution Coach thing that we're doing, is to empower you to go do this stuff instead of any one of us trying to take that mantle. Okay, so I wish I could see all y'all's comments about Rush. I hope most of y'all feel the same way about him as I do. Are you seeing mostly good stuff there?
All good stuff.
All good stuff. Okay, let's talk about Ted Cruz. I am going to join with Dinesh D'Souza and say that I am very, very unhappy with Ted Cruz for the exact same reason that Dinesh says in his video that he's unhappy with Ted Cruz, that I wasn't invited to go to Cancun with he and Heidi and the kids. I mean, that's why I'm upset with him. I would have loved to have been in Cancun with Ted, and I see nothing wrong with Ted going and taking his family on vacation. So there it is. You know, the fascination with this is just hilarious. Matt Walsh said it better than anybody when he said, you know, okay, everybody, I want you to get ready for this big scandal. Ted Cruz went on a vacation. Let that sink in. I know you need to get that was how Matt did it on his show. So thumbs up, Matt Walsh. I thought you handled that really well. Look, this is a distraction from the Green New Deal failure, from the fact that this, you know, effort to move Texas off of fossil fuels and coal and all of that has been a disaster and a failure. And frankly, a failure of Greg Abbott. Let's just be honest about this. Because of Greg Abbott's horrible leadership over the last 12 months in COVID, apparently, at least according to the stories that are being released, and I haven't gone out there and checked this out myself, so forgive me if this is has been misrepresented in the media, but apparently there were only about 15% of the on-the-ground checks by ERCOT that were supposed to be done in a normal time period, all because of COVID. Now, how ridiculously stupid is that, right? We've got a disease or a virus that 99.9% are going to be fine with, and we're not going out and checking on the electric grid over that? I mean, it's just emblematic. It's that is Greg Abbott's leadership. That's the legacy of Greg Abbott. So as you are doing without energy, without electricity, without water, and all of that, thank Greg Abbott. Okay, Biden's gun control. I mentioned this last week, but I have to. It bears repeating again, and I do want to encourage you, if you're on my Facebook page, go down or maybe up, I don't know which way, to the post that I did of the interview with Dave Brody last week, because we not only talked about Rush and his legacy, but we also talked about Biden's gun control efforts. And for me, this is deja vu, man. This is the same battle that I fought 23 years ago against none other than Andrew Cuomo. He wasn't governor of New York at the time. He was Housing and Urban Development Secretary under Clinton. And, you know, he was bringing about and getting cities to sue gun manufacturers, blaming them for crime. And it was just a ridiculous, horrible, stupid legal theory. As I said on Dave Brody's show, you know, I figured out a nicer way of saying this, but that's like suing the spoon manufacturer for the extra weight I gain at Thanksgiving. Is that a nicer way to say it? Because I used to say it would be like Rosie O'Donnell suing the spoon manufacturer for being fat, but she's not fat anymore. She's skinny, so it's not. Yeah, it's not
Is she actually?
Yeah, it's not a funny joke anymore.
Oh, man.
So, what about one of the other blowhards on The View? Who would be a good one to? Is Whoopi fat?
She's
Okay, that'll be my new joke. So, so suing a gun manufacturer, blaming them for legally making a gun, sold legally, you buy it legally, you store it legally, someone breaks into your house, steals it illegally, goes and commits a crime with it illegally, and then we're going to go trace back through that and blame the gun manufacturer. I mean, that literally makes as much sense as us, Whoopi is eating way too much and gaining way too much weight, and we're going to blame the spoon manufacturer for Whoopi's choice of using that spoon. That is a terrible legal theory, and it should not even be, no court should even hear that. But in this world that we live in, I hate to say it, but I think we really are about to see deja vu all over again. Thank you, Yogi Berra. But it was 1999 when this happened, and man, I'm blanking on that. There were a couple of smaller firearms manufacturers that went bankrupt because of these lawsuits. It was costing so much to fend off all these cities that were joining the lawsuit. So that was when I did the bill in Texas to stop cities from suing gun manufacturers, and other states started doing the same thing. And then we got a bunch of people together around the country. Thank you, Susanna Hupp and Trey Blocker and the others on our team that helped to make that happen. But we put a really big team together, National Sports Shooting Foundation, NRA, others. But we were the tip of the spear on that, and we went after the cities that were suing the gun manufacturers. And we said, your lawsuits based on this horrible legal theory are meant to bankrupt these gun manufacturers, which is then making it harder for us to live out our Second Amendment rights, because you're making it harder to acquire the firearms that we need to live out our Second Amendment rights. So anyway, we finally put a stop to all that nonsense, but, it's back. Here it is, 23 years later. And Joe Biden, of course, for Joe Biden, that was just yesterday. So, I mean, that was less than halfway through. No, wait, he's been in politics for 50 years, so 23 years ago. Yeah, so that was in the second half of his political career. So this is brand, this is not old news to him. It's recent news to him. So it doesn't surprise me. Horrible legal theory, very bad for the Second Amendment, as are his other ideas of, banning regular capacity magazines and certain types of guns. And if you want to know more about all of that and the original history on the Second Amendment, why we have it, what it's intended for, whether or not weapons of war are covered under the Second Amendment, then you definitely need to watch our video on that. It's actually episode 1 in our Library of Liberty. It's called Constitutional Defense of Your Family and Freedom. And the first episode in that, we give a presentation on the Second Amendment, the history of the Second Amendment, all of that. So you can get that at patriotacademy.com, or you can come with us and we give that presentation in person at our constitutional defense course, which is why we were having to fight ice and lack of gasoline to get back to Texas, because we were out in Pahrump, Nevada, had 300 people with us this last trip. A lot of great training. If you haven't had a chance to watch the video, go to my Facebook page and watch Bernice Bacon, the interview I had with her, 89 and a half years old. 89 and a half. Have you watched that yet? It is so cute. Anyway, she was fantastic. Enjoyed having her. She shot for the whole 4 days and did fantastic. Okay, yeah, we cannot lose our Second Amendment rights. 100% agree with that. We've got to, look, these Second Amendment sanctuary counties, I think that's going to grow all across America, and it's going to be, there's a couple of ways to push back, okay? So the number one tip of the spear fight against Joe Biden's gun control measures is going to be the Attorney General in your state. If you're in a red state and you have a Republican Attorney General, you need to be pushing them to join Ken Paxton from Texas to file suits every time Biden hands down an executive order, or even if Congress passes one of these gun control measures, to file the lawsuits and fight these things on a federal level constitutionally that they violate the Second Amendment. So we can win those cases. The law is on our side, the history is on our side, and we need some really good attorneys general fighting those, and I think we can beat them back. But in the meantime, fight at the local level, and that means get your county to become a Second Amendment sanctuary county where none of Biden's stuff will be implemented, where your sheriff makes a public commitment to the entire county. Our law enforcement will not be used to take away your guns, limit your magazine capacities, or any of those things. And that is really where we're going to stop this stuff. And so that it has to be fought at the local level by that sheriff and by those county commissioners until we win at the federal level. And if we don't win at the federal level through the courts or through Congress, then we have to have the Convention of States actually address this. And the only way you ultimately overrule, and I know everybody wants to use the word nullify, but the only way you nullify a federal law that is unconstitutional. Only way you ultimately truly nullify it properly and constitutionally is through a constitutional amendment. That's not a new idea. The Founding Fathers did that with the 11th Amendment very early in the nation's history. We should do that more often, and I think that's going to be necessary with not only Second Amendment things, but some of the COVID fascism as well. So the ways you can help, if you want to stop Second Amendment from being infringed upon, call your Attorney General and ask that they get on board with Ken Paxton to fight back against these things. If you're in Texas, then let him know that you support what he's doing on that front. Call your county commissioners, county judge, and sheriff and say, are we a Second Amendment sanctuary? And if not, are you willing to get on board with something like that? Now, that language we do have. I think Montgomery County, Texas has one of the better ones. There's a lot of counties that have done it. And so that's easy. And then get involved in Convention of States, conventionofstates.com. That's where we have to win this ultimately. And we don't have a lot of time. So, I mean, we need to win some of these states that are considering Convention of States right now. There's a battle going on in about 15 states to try to get them on the call. And then a year from now or 2 years from now, depending on the state, then we'll be back at it to add another 7 or 8, and we'll finally hit that 34 mark and have our call of a convention. Okay. Wow, do I see Billy Fronterhouse from high school on here? How you doing, Billy? Man, it's amazing the people that you run into on Facebook these days. Yeah, Joni, great question. How do you properly approach your sheriff to establish a rapport? I think you make the call and ask if you can have a sit down with the sheriff. Depending on the size of your county, that should be very doable. And just say, hey, I am pro law enforcement. I'm a back the blue guy or gal, and I want to come sit down and talk with you. And can I have 10 minutes of your time? Ask for a short amount of time. Say, can I just have 10 minutes to come by and visit with you? I want to ask you about some things, and take a copy of the Second Amendment Sanctuary County resolution from Montgomery County, and I'll try to find that and post it on Facebook for you guys, and ask them to do it. And some of your counties, they will have already done it, but ask them to do it and make sure they know. Say, listen, I know there's going to be a lot of new gun control measures coming down from the federal government, and you're our last line of defense. We're counting on you to make sure that they don't violate the Constitution. Be very polite, be very respectful, thankful, thank them for their service. Let them know, hey, I'm not some crazy conspiracy theory person. I'm not, I'm just an American citizen, loves the Constitution, loves freedom, and believes in the Second Amendment, and I know you do as well, and I want to help us in our county to defend this. Daniel Horowitz and I are talking about the idea of essentially creating almost like sheriff's posses in counties where you team up with the sheriff and you come with us to Front Sight to get your actual handgun training so that they know you're competent. But then you basically become a volunteer with the sheriff's department so that if they need more people in a riot-like situation or something like that, that you can be called upon. And so some counties already have stuff like that. That's a great way to get involved and build relationship with your sheriff. And then some counties, man, they're gonna be all for this gun control, and you're gonna have sheriffs and county commissioners that love the idea. And if you live in one of those counties, I suggest moving. Unless you can win the county. Now, look, if it's a 50-50 county and you think you can win that sheriff's race or that county commissioner's race, but more than likely, if your county elected a sheriff that bad, then it's not likely you're going to turn that around.
And I think if you know a former police officer or somebody in law enforcement, they could go with you as well.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, if you know someone in law enforcement or someone in your family was in law enforcement in the past and they're willing to go with you, that definitely will help. Yeah. And listen, this is one of the reasons we've always said when it hits the fan and you need to be able to talk to an elected official, that's the worst time to be introducing yourself to them. You need to have relationships with these folks. So that's why you get involved in the campaigns, in the primaries, and you go to the dinners and you go to the parties and all that kind of stuff in order to get to know the judges and the sheriff and the county commissioner, so that it's just much easier to be able to sit down with them or pick up the phone and call them on a particular issue. So be willing to do that now, especially knowing, look, we're fixing to go into an election cycle where, it's not that far away. In Texas, we're a year away from the primaries. So now's the time to be thinking about running for sheriff or running for county commissioner or county judge or whatever it might be. We've just barely missed the window for mayor, city council, school board. Those races are now. That filing deadline was last week. So if you didn't file, then the next thing to do is survey the candidates. Go find out who's running. Get your own list of questions to ask them. If they're on the school board, if they're running for school board, you find a candidate that's willing to say there'll be no critical race theory that divides and destroys. That's not going to be taught in our school. If it's city council, you're looking for somebody that's going to say no defunding the police around here, and then get behind that candidate. And if nobody is like that, then you got to pick the least bad one to support this time, and then make sure you have good candidates next year at this time. So that actually brings me to campaign coach. You might remember right here on the front porch when I had Raz and Luke sitting here on the porch and we were talking about the creation of the campaign coach. That was about 5 or 6 weeks ago when we were filming that here. It is ready. It's available right now at patriotacademy.com. So if you've been thinking about running, you're considering running for office, you need to take the campaign coach course. It's quick, it's easy to learn, it's done really, really well. So take the campaign coach course. It won't take you long to go through it, but it's a wealth of information. I'm telling you, these guys have run, I mean, between the three of us, we've probably been involved in 500 campaigns. I don't know, a lot. But it's just fantastic information. And what it'll do for you, it'll help you answer the question of whether or not you want to run for office, whether or not God's calling you to run for office. Or if instead you want to help somebody else, or you want to find somebody else and recruit somebody else, it'll really help you know what to look for and the right questions to ask someone that you're trying to recruit to run for office, and to encourage them and then get them to go through the course as well. It's it's only a few dollars. I think right now it's even half off for the first 30 days or 60 days or something. So I think it's less than $50. So go to patriotacademy.com, take that course, and then make a decision about whether or not you want to run or you think you should help somebody else run. Campaign Coach, that's the name of it, and it's at patriotacademy.com. Okay, remember, I always talk about something we offer, I try to, and something someone else offers. That's the one that we offer, Campaign Coach. You need to do that. Everybody needs to read this book, Live Not by Lies. Either get it on Audible and listen to it, or get the book. Just fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of good information in this book, and just the basic concept of live not by lies. I mean, that is what I feel like we're doing as a nation. It's the reason I refuse to wear the mask. I won't be a part of the lie. It's a complete lie what they're telling us right now about COVID, about the mask, and I just won't participate in it. And it's not about masks, but it definitely applies to COVID. It's about communism, and it's about how to resist, how to have civil disobedience, and as Christians, how do you do this correctly? So, fantastic book, Live Not by Lies. Live Not by Lies. In fact, I want to have a t-shirt that says Live Not by Lies that has the mask with a circle and a slash through it. And it's one of the reasons I encourage. Oh, thank you, Roger. There's the Montgomery County, Sanctuary County resolution. I appreciate that, Roger. Well done, man. You just saved me some time. Yeah, John, I agree, man. It is an incredibly important book. All right.
Somebody asked a question. Are you ready for those?
Yeah, go ahead. What do we got?
How can the border states continue to fund the wall despite Biden's executive order?
Well, so the challenge with the border states being able to pick up where Trump left off with the wall is that, and I have not read up on this. I have not read any experts on this, so I am just speaking off the top of my head here, which is what this Front Porch Live has always been, is I think what we're going to run into there is literally a authority on that particular piece of land. In other words, the federal government condemned that area to be able to put the wall up, and that is not owned by the state. So the state can't just overrule the feds. And unfortunately, you have an idiot in the White House that actually stopped construction on a wall to protect our nation, and will literally fight to prevent a state from being able to finish the wall. I mean, it is you have to hate your nation. You have to hate your country and want your nation to be overrun and not want the rule of law. I mean, that's how foolish these people are that we've allowed to end up in the White House. So there's no doubt states can build a wall. They can do that, but they would have to come back 100 feet or whatever to the state property. At least that's off the top of my head. Now, I'll do a little more research. I'll talk to some friends in the legislatures of these states and find out what we can do and get back to y'all. But There are things that states can do. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, that was actually part of what led to Trump being so pro-wall, was in the areas where walls were built and defenses were put in place by states, they saw drastic decreases in the traffic, which means drastic decreases in sexual exploitation and human sex trafficking and crime and drugs and everything else. It's not just illegals crossing over. It's knowing that you have a porous border, you allow for the illegal activity to come as well. And since Biden has said that people in the federal government can no longer say illegal aliens, we're going to say that as often as we can here, because that's the proper textbook definition of someone that is not an American citizen coming into the nation illegally. They're an illegal alien. That has always been the term. That is still the term, no matter how much the Newspeak Ministry of Truth folks change it. So, an executive order is not law, but it could be executing the law, which is actually the real purpose of an executive order. Is to it's Article 2 that he faithfully execute the laws. That's where they get that. So it isn't creating law. It should never create law, but it should execute a law that is already passed. So if you look at an executive order and it's creating a new law, then it is unconstitutional and should be ignored and should be fought in the courts and at every level. Okay. You got any more on your end?
I think you should, just for people who are new, run down real fast on how the Convention of States works. Some people are asking how do we keep liberals from taking over and running with it.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. We'll do just a real quick answer on that. And if you want to learn more about it, by the way, Kara was saying, if you couldn't hear over the mic, Convention of States, a lot of y'all were asking about how it works and that you're not familiar with it. So first of all, take our classes, because in Constitutional Live and in Biblical Citizenship, we cover this. In Biblical Citizenship, it'll be the last week. It'll be week 8 when we're talking about the duty of citizens. It's one of the items that we talk about that we can be active in to help protect religious liberty and all of those things. So take one of our classes and you'll get a lot more detail on that. But also go to conventionofstates.com, because it tells you all about how this takes place. It answers all of the objections, many of which I had years ago. I used to be against this out of fear that, who's going to take over that convention, what's going to come out of that convention. Well, I don't trust the politicians in my own state legislature. Why would I trust what they would do at a Convention of States? I had all of those objections. The short answer to all of that is that this is a system and process debate, not an issue debate. And it literally is about restructuring the powers, shifting it from the federal government to the state government. So even though your state legislator may not agree with you and they may not be conservative, but they want power. And they would rather have the power than the federal government have the power. So that's good for us too, because it's closer to home. We can hold them more accountable. We can fight that battle and win at the local level. And even if you can't win that in your particular state, think of it this way. If the power returns to the individual 50 states and the federal government is only doing what only the federal government can and should do, which under the Constitution and the way the Founding Fathers designed America is very limited. 17 enumerated powers. It's mostly dealing with external. It's some dealing with things that cross state lines. But if we got the federal government back to that point, and then each state could do what they wanted. If California wants to be crazy, they can be crazy. And if you can't, in California, can't keep it from becoming crazy and it gets so bad that you can't stand it anymore, you would have safe places to go. Texas could be conservative again. Idaho, all these places could say no to the nonsense, and you could decide to move and let people choose if they want to live in la land and live in a world where people make up 114 different genders and ignore science and are science deniers. Then you can go to places like California and Oregon and Massachusetts and be a part of the flat Earth world. Or you can come to a common sense state, and my hope is that more and more people that have common sense will move to those states, and that'll actually cause the people in our own states that are la land people to say, I don't want to be here anymore, and they'll get the heck out and go to la land. And it'll really allow the nation to stay together as a whole, but people that are that diametrically opposed to kind of pick out their own places and live in their places the way that they want to live. So it is the only thing that's going to keep us from a civil war. I just don't think there's any way to hold the nation together without a civil war unless you return the nation to a true constitutional republic with that special form of federalism that our founders designed, with that separation of powers, not only at the legislative, executive, judiciary, but also at the federal, state, and local level, and let there be a true separation of powers. Right now, all the power, we give it to all levels of government. Any level of government can do anything that they want, and that is not the design of our system, and that will not work long term. You have to have jurisdictions, you have to have defined powers at each level. So that's what a convention of states is all about. It's about redrawing the lines of jurisdiction and saying federal government, you can only do these things. States can do these things, and local governments can do these things. And essentially just reiterating what the founders put in place in 1787 and wiping out the 100 years of Supreme Court decisions that have ignored the original Constitution and created their own, what I call, Courtstitution. So that's the purpose of a convention of states. The way that it would actually work is that each state would send commissioners to that event, to that convention of states. And they get to decide how many they want to send. They can send 10, they can send 20, they can send 2. They only get 1 vote per state. So you have 50 votes at that convention. And that's good news because we have 31 solid Republican states and state legislatures. So that would dominate at the convention. That doesn't mean it's going to be 31 conservative voting blocks, but it does mean at least they're leaning more conservative and they're not leaning left like California and Massachusetts and others would. And then at the convention, they'll debate, how to do this. They'll do things like term limits, something that I think would really help. I mean, why do you think these people are so out of touch? Why do you think these impeachment managers could stand up there and just lie through their teeth? Why do you think Mitch McConnell and Murkowski and Romney and Ben Sass and all these, they're so far removed from reality. I mean, they have no clue what it's like to live in America anymore. They live in this bubble where they are pampered and catered to all day long, and people kiss their butt all day long. They don't know what it's like to have to produce an income. They don't know what it's like to have to provide for their family and all that. They live off the taxpayers. They've gotten rich off the taxpayers. And I know Romney was rich before that, and he did create jobs back then. But that's a long time ago. And since then, he created Obamacare in Massachusetts, and he's been a politician for the last 20 years. Anyway, bottom line is these people are out of touch, and the reason they're out of touch is because they've been there too long. We need term limits. So it'll be things like term limits. It'll be things like giving the states a quicker mechanism to overrule a Supreme Court decision with 2/3 or 3/5 or whatever number of the states. So, that's the kind of amendments that would come out. Now, to all of you that have asked, but how do you keep the liberals from taking over or George Soros from taking over and all that? Listen, the Soros liberal crowd does not want this to happen. They are against this. They know that we would dominate at the convention and that we would shift the power back to the states, and then we would have the opportunity to run our states the way we want. They like the power being in the federal government because then they can control just a handful of people and then control the whole nation with just that handful of people. So they are against this. But if we make it happen, can they take it over? Well, they could certainly influence it. I mean, they can certainly, try to influence who California sends. They can certainly influence, who the more liberal states send, but they're not going to have the majority of the states. So I don't think there's any way they could take over. Even if they did, though, if they took over and had constitutional amendments from this convention that were bad, we can kill those amendments. We only need 13 states to kill an amendment. You have to have 38 states say yes to an amendment. So the convention happens. They propose a term limits amendment. They say, we want members of Congress to only be able to serve for 12 years. Well, that amendment would go back to all 50 states. And you have to have 38 states say yes in both chambers. So if one chamber says no in just 13 different states, they can't get to, that would only get to 37, so then they can't get the amendment. It doesn't go into the Constitution. So that's how easy it would be to kill a bad amendment. And yes, the flip side is true. That means it's going to be hard to pass good amendments, which is why we'll never pass a pro-life amendment to the Constitution or some of these issue amendments that I would like to see. I don't think those will get done because you can't get 38 states to ratify it. It's the structure amendments. That's what really counts, because if the structure amendments pass, you move power from the feds to the states. Now we can fight each of those battles at each of the state levels in the 50 states. And that's winnable. That's doable. Right now, winning at the federal level is tough. We're not going to win anything for the next 2 years at least. And even then, it'll be very little that we win. And then maybe after 2024, if we truly have a revolution of freedom, then maybe we can start winning again. I didn't get tired of winning. I don't know why Trump said we were going to get tired of winning. That's the one thing he said that he was going to do that he did not do. You know, he said he was going to make us tired of winning. I'm not tired. I didn't get tired of winning. Did you? No. He did everything else he said he was going to do.
Convention of States or divorce, national.
Yeah, it's Convention of States or divorce, and divorce means war. If you think that the left is going to let us just split up into like-minded regions, hey, you go your way, we'll go our way, you're dreaming. We pay their bills. We are their sugar daddy. So there is no way they're going to let us just politely go away. We not only pay their bills, we fight their wars, we do all the hard work. You're dreaming if you think that California and Oregon and Washington are going to say, okay, we'll be our own country over here on the left coast, and Middle America can kind of be its own country, and then the Eastern United States will be its own country, and everybody just go. Not going to happen because they want our money, they want our tax base, they want our young men and women to go fight their wars for them. So that's the only way that you're going to keep from having that civil war. And you could have a civil war to split up, and I think we win that if that happens because our folks are much better at that sort of thing. But that is you're asking for misery. I've never been through a war, but I've read enough and I've talked to people that have. And as a student of history, I don't want my kids going through that. In our own nation, a civil war. If you just get in your time machine and go back to the 1860s and how miserable it was, how awful and evil, it is not what we want. We don't want that. This is an Article 5 Convention of States is a peaceful way to do this, and for all of us to be able to still live in freedom. Yes, Beverly, I'm back on Parler, but I am having some trouble with it. So my buddy Mark Meckler is the interim CEO, so I should pick up the phone and ask him exactly what I need to do. But anyway, I think right now they're not accepting new folks. They just went online the last few days, and so I would expect it's going to take them a few days to get fully operational. But thank God they are. We need them. The nation needs Parler right now. This is a very important battle. I encourage everybody, if you're on Parler already, start using it again. Stay on there. Don't give up on them. I'm not giving up on them. I think they're going to do great once they get all these ducks in a row and get everything ironed out. And then I think they're going to start accepting new members in about a week and a half or two. But they're basically taking care of the family they got, and then they're going to invite new people to join the family.
I think you need to make it clear. Somebody said, help me understand what the Convention of States, are you seeking to restructure the Constitution? Trying to wrap my head around it. That it's amendments, so it's just like we've already got.
Yeah, okay, so the question is, are we trying to restructure the Constitution? We're actually trying to restore the Constitution. So let me just give a 3-minute constitutional lesson here, okay? The Constitution of the United States set up a federal government that had very limited power. And remember, the reason we did that is because the Articles of Confederation have failed. States were basically at each other's throats. They weren't letting merchants sell across state lines. There were all kinds of problems. They weren't paying for the war. They weren't doing any of the things. So we needed a stronger federal government. So the Constitution created a stronger federal government, but it told the federal government, you can only do these things that we list in Article 1, Section 8. At that time, it was 15 enumerated powers. Now, the amendments, we've amended the Constitution 27 times. There are 27 amendments to the Constitution. Now, those 27 amendments only added 2 extra powers, but there's 17 enumerated powers now. So what does that mean? That means that the federal government has a bucket of powers, 17 of them, and that's all they're supposed to do. That was the way our nation was created and designed. It ran that way pretty much for 150 years. And then in the 1930s, the Supreme Court started allowing Congress to add power to itself without coming to us and amending the Constitution to add a power. Let me give you an example. The 18th Amendment, they did that right. The 18th Amendment banned alcohol. And people went to their congressman and said, we have a rampant alcoholism problem in the country. Please ban alcohol. And Congressman said, well, let me get out my instruction manual. Let me get out my rule book, the Constitution. What does it say I'm allowed to do? Do I have authority to ban alcohol? Let's see. Here's my list. I can do post offices and post roads. I can borrow money. I can do the militia. Do the military. I can do all these things listed in Article 1, Section 8. Nope, nothing in here about banning alcohol. Sorry, I can't do that. The only way I can do that is if you take the bucket of powers, which has a lid on it, and it has a lock, and the key belongs to the American people. If the American people go in and say, we're going to amend that, we're going to open up the bucket, we're going to give you a new power to ban alcohol. That's what the 18th Amendment did. We literally amended the Constitution to add power to the federal government. But then with the 21st Amendment, we amended the Constitution to take that power back. We said we don't like how prohibition is going. Okay, so right now what has happened, ever since then, that bucket, Congress and the courts, Congress meaning the United States Congress in Washington, D.C., our Senate and House, and the United States Supreme Court, they have added power to the bucket. They've given the federal government the power to do all of these things that the Constitution does not give them the power to do. There is nothing in the Constitution that allows for the federal government to have a Department of Agriculture, Department of the Interior, Department of Education. Tons of these things that they created for themselves. They gave themselves power. This is ugly stuff. They gave themselves power. And so what we need to do is take that power back. And the only way you can take that power back away from them and give it back to the states properly is to amend the Constitution to clearly say, hey, what you guys did was wrong. We're going back to what the Constitution originally said. And that's what a convention of states is all about. It was actually the brainchild of George Mason. He's the father of the Bill of Rights. He stood up on September 15th at the Constitutional Convention in 1787, and he said, if this ever happens, he foresaw what's happening. He said, if the federal government ever adds power to itself, we have to have a way to take that back without them being involved. Because until he stood up on the 15th, the only way you could amend the Constitution was if Congress, the federal government, proposed the amendment, sent that amendment to all the states, and then the states ratified it, and then it would go in the Constitution. So he said, wait a minute, if the federal government takes power from us without us giving them permission to do so, and they're the only ones that can start the process of giving that power back, they'll never do it. Nobody in history has given power back except George Washington. He's the only guy in history to do that. So there's no way they're going to do it. So George Mason says, we need to leave the federal government out of this. And we, through the Constitution and through an amendment, we need to be the ones to be able to open the lid, take that power back, and give it back to the states, and the feds not have any say on that. And he said the way we can do that is an through a convention of states. And so into Article 5 of the Constitution, he inserted this idea of, instead of the Congress proposing an amendment and then the states ratifying it, we're going to have the states come together, have a meeting, propose amendments, and then it'll go back to each of the 50 state legislatures. It wasn't 50 at the time, but that's what it would be today. And they have to ratify. So that was Mason's brainchild. It was so good that when he finished, there was no debate. No one opposed it. It was unanimous. It was literally a mic drop moment. And unfortunately, we haven't ever used it. It's been sitting in the Constitution waiting on us for such a time as this, at this moment when the federal government has gotten so out of control. It is the tool that can save the Constitution and I believe save our nation. We have to use it. And so I strongly encourage you, conventionofstates.com, get involved. Sorry to be a broken record.
I'm getting paid to say this.
I'm not getting paid a penny. Somebody thinks I'm getting paid to say that?
Just saying, in case anybody thinks, what is your...
Yeah, I am not on Convention of States payroll. They pay me nothing to do this. I am a volunteer. I've been advocating for this for 11 years. From the time I started doing Constitution classes across the country, I've been pushing for this. And that was before conventionofstates.com was created. It was before Mark Levin wrote his book on liberty amendments. I've been for this for a long time because, and this is what I would always say in my Constitution class, I'd say, all right, look, I know some of you are against this, but let me tell you who's on my side. And then I would flip to the back of the Constitution and I would say, these are the people that think Article 5 should be in the Constitution and should be used. And I'd flip to the back and go, George Washington, Gouverneur Morris, James Madison, James Wilson. In other words, the people that gave us the Constitution thought this was a good idea. That's whose side I'm on. Okay.
Okay, so if why can't term limits be passed? through the legislature, through Congress. Then,
so term limits could be proposed by Congress. Can't be passed by Congress, but could be proposed by Congress. But it takes 2/3. So any amendment to the Constitution requires a two-step process. The first step is that 2/3 of Congress drafts, an amendment and votes for it. That's step one. And then step two is it goes to the 50 states to be ratified. That's how you amend the Constitution. Or 2/3 of the states call for a convention. That's 34 states. And then 3/4 of the states ratify. So that's what it takes. Wait, did I get that backwards? 3/4 is, I think I just said that backwards. 2/3 would be, yeah, 2/3 is 2/3 bigger than 3/4? Yes, 2/3 is bigger than 3/4. 3/4 have to make
3/4 is bigger.
3/4 is bigger.
Bigger than 2/3 because it's 3 out of 4. And
No, 2/3 is bigger.
2 out of 3.
No, 3/4 is bigger.
2 out of 3 would
You know, I was a finance major. There's something about, the red light and being live on camera that your brain does not work. This is actually in our workbook, and I'm not getting it. Okay, anyway, I blew that.
34 states call the convention, 38 to ratify.
Right, I know it's 34 call and 38 ratify, but which one's 2/3 and which one?
Nobody knows that number anyway, so say 34 and 38.
Okay.
34 out of 50 is 3/4, right?
34 out of 50
Come on now.
is 3/4.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, yeah.
this is going to bug me.
3/4.
Okay. What time does Mark Meckler start on Sunday? 7 o'clock, and he goes till 7:30, usually. I don't know if he was done tonight or not. What else? Any other questions?
Hold on a second. Okay, somebody asked, are there going to be Patriot Academy boot camps this summer?
Yes, there will be Patriot Academy boot camps this summer. All over the country. Hopefully, Lord willing.
We actually don't know the answer to that.
No, we're pretty sure. Idaho is 95% on. Arizona 95% on. Florida 100% on. Delaware, let's see what their crazy legislature comes up with. So
And Indiana.
they're all saying 3/4 is bigger than 2/3. We're gonna have a math debate.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's see. So back to my lesson. So 2/3 of Congress or 2/3 of states start the process, and then 3/4 of states finish the process. That's how it goes. 38 states to finish.
Convention of States to learn more.
Yeah, go to Convention of States to learn more, and tune in to Mark Meckler next week at 7 o'clock, and tell him Rick doesn't do math well. I usually do math well. There's something about this live thing. Okay. There is a Capital Boot Camp in Texas. That's our big national Patriot Academy. It's the first week of August, and that one, man, is going to be students on the House side, military on the Senate side, Constitution coaches coming from all over the country. You'll get to testify in committee. We'll have all kinds of cool workshops. It's going to be amazing. So plan on the first week of August.
And military, did you say that?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, David, my Captain America face diaper is somewhere around here, but I have a better face diaper now for my next time to fly. It's over in the office, so I don't have it with me, but it's a great one. It actually just says Romans 1:22, professing fools. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. That is America and the world right now. Monty's got the numbers for me. Thank you, Monty. How old for the boot camps? Okay, so I'm not going to repeat that one. Yeah, I see you, Billy. We sure did go to the same high school. Did you hear me say that earlier? Oh, wait. So what was I going to say? Let's see. Oh, how old for the boot camps? Okay, our youth leadership program is 16 years old to 25. Our military Patriot Academy is any age, as long as you're active duty or retired military. And then our Constitution Coach program is any age. Yes, I absolutely, Joshua, absolutely. I've been calling for that for a long time. supports states defunding state universities that are teaching anti-American propaganda. In fact, last fall when President Trump did the 1776 Commission and he did his executive order saying you can't do critical race theory in federal agencies or anybody receiving federal money, I was out there screaming from the rooftops, every state legislature needs to do the same thing and say no college gets a penny of our taxpayer money if they are teaching this communist baloney of critical race theory that is tearing our nation apart. I'm a student of history, and I don't know of another nation that taught its children to hate the very nation in which they were growing up. It's just mind-boggling to me that we let this happen, and it's happening on almost every college campus out there. Oh yes, Heidi St. John is running for Congress, so if you live in Washington, go help Heidi St. John, even if you don't live in Washington. I think somebody just shared a link. Yeah, HeidiSt.JohnForCongress.com. So make a donation to her and help her win. She would be great. She's taking on one of the congresswomen that voted for impeachment of Donald Trump. So that we need to win that race. But more importantly, Heidi would just be great in Congress. Let's see. The August 1st class will be at the state capitol in Austin, Texas. No doubt we need election integrity. We're not going to win those races without it. So state legislatures right now, election integrity is the issue. Texas Capitol Boot Camp is... it's on our website at patriotacademy.com. It's roughly $800 to $1,000 depending on when you apply. That's for 7 days. That's your hotel, meals, materials, the whole week of that experience. The regional academies around the country are around $300 to $500 depending on which one you go to, and those are usually about 3 days.
I guess, do we not have it up on the website yet?
Should be up on the website. Yes, Carrie, we're doing a Defender class in the fall. We'll do multiple classes in the fall. We've got several coming up. So March 21st, March 25th, those are the two next classes we'll be doing. Weather's probably going to be perfect. I think Brad Stein may be coming to do Comedy and Constitution. It's going to be a fun week. Definitely a good time to come. But then we've got another couple of classes happening in May, right at the end of May, first week of June. Yes, that will be a hot one. So if you don't want cold weather and you prefer to sweat it out like I do, then that first week of June will be great. And then we'll have fall dates posted as soon as possible. But expect at least one in September, one in October, one in November, and maybe one in December. Ammo's very expensive right now, but we're modifying the class a little bit so you can use a little less ammo and do more dry practice, which I think is what makes you better anyway. And you don't want to put this off, folks. Get out there and do the Constitutional Defense course with us. First of all, you don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to social distance. It's a safe haven from all of the COVID fascism. We have great fellowship. We have a great time. You learn a lot of good stuff in the Constitution. You meet patriots from all over the country. And most importantly, you learn how to defend yourself and defend your family. So make sure you are coming to a Constitutional Defense course soon. And I will share that link as we normally do. What other questions you got for me, babe?
I know that we talked about this the other night about nullification and what is the proper role of the state or the proper steps for a state to push back on a federal mandate from Biden that clearly oversteps Constitution. Oversteps what states want to do.
Yeah, I think this is going to get debated a lot. Okay, so Kara's question was, what is a proper interposition for lower level governments? In other words, the lesser magistrate. How do you stand in the gap for your citizen when a higher level government is overstepping their boundaries? So if the federal government does something that is unconstitutional, what can states do? When is nullification okay? And like I've always said, a convention of states is proper nullification. You properly nullify federal law by doing a constitutional amendment to overrule that law. But I realize that's a high bar, and it's very difficult to do, and that takes time. So I also believe that during that fight, which can take years, of both a convention and of fighting at the federal level, that during that time it is appropriate for a state or a county government to say, we're not going to enforce that unconstitutional law while we're challenging it. It's unconstitutional, and so while we properly fight it, don't expect us to use our sheriffs or our chief of police or our health department or any of our resources to enforce this unconstitutional federal law. That's essentially what some of these states have done when it comes to medical marijuana. That's what the sanctuary cities have done. That's what the Second Amendment sanctuary counties are all about. And the most, I think, proper way to do that and not have anarchy, because the problem is you have to be careful here. This is a slippery slope. If you can say that law that they passed is unconstitutional, we're not going to enforce it, then who gets to say what's constitutional? So now if each state is deciding on their own what's constitutional, or every county in the country gets to decide on their own what's constitutional, and not have to fight that at a higher level at the federal courts or at a convention of states, well, then you've got mass chaos. There's no point in having a federal government. I know some people say, yeah, let's do that. Well, I'm not so sure that's the best route either, because lots of reasons. But anyway, so you can't just go into mass chaos. You can't just say anybody can nullify any law that they want if they have some level of a constitutional argument. So, me personally, I think it's got to be a very clear constitutional argument that this violates the Constitution. You can back it up. You can show why it violates the Constitution. And then it's a two-pronged approach. You fight that unconstitutional law at the federal level through the courts or a convention of states, which is technically at the state level, but it's on a federal playing field because it's amending the federal Constitution. So you've got to be fighting that on the federal level, and then in the meantime, refusing to participate, civil disobedience if necessary, to say we will not participate in that unconstitutional law. But then, if you lose all the court cases and the convention of states, and the federal answer is this law is constitutional, and all methods of fighting it are exhausted, then you've got a decision to make. At that point, you have to say, well, if now we're not going to follow that law, we have to be willing to go to war, because now we're saying we are in such a disagreement with the federal answer to this challenge that you're going to have to come in and force us at a gun to participate in that thing. So we haven't seen that happen in our lifetimes. That no one has taken it that far. Because at the points where states or counties have pushed back against the federal government and said we're not going to implement that federal drug law, or we're not going to implement that immigration law, or that Second Amendment gun grab, or whatever it is, there hasn't yet been an example that I know of where the federal government sent in troops to enforce that law, and the local government said we're willing to fight you to prevent from allowing that law to be enforced in our area. So that hasn't happened in our lifetimes, folks. I mean, we could be on the brink of that kind of thing happening. But when we talk about nullification and all these things, that's what you have to realize this is headed towards. So we really have to have cooler heads prevail, and it's got to be a methodical process, not just willy-nilly, we don't like that, so we're going to nullify it. It's got to be done in a proper constitutional way, and there needs to be good debates about it. I mean, I don't fault anybody that says, hey, I think that law, if passed, is unconstitutional. Let's have our legislators come to that conclusion. Have them debate that. Get an opinion from the Attorney General. Get experts to come in and testify. And then pass a resolution that says, if that law is passed by the federal government, we will not enforce that in our state, and we will immediately file suit and fight it in the federal courts, and we will start working on a convention of states to overturn if we lose in the courts. So that's a really, really long answer. But it has pieces to it, and you have to fight at every level. And that brings us all the way back to where we started, which is the sheriff. The sheriff is the last line of defense. So if you want to have a true Second Amendment sanctuary county, you got to have a sheriff that is willing to say, as that battle is going on at the federal level to keep that law from staying on the books and whatever, nobody in my county is going to follow this. We will not allow a federal ATF or anybody else to go beating down doors in our county and taking people's guns. We need sheriffs like that are willing to stand up and say, not on my watch, not in my county. Let's see. Sounds like we got questions about the race for governor. Did you see some of those?
Yeah. A few of us said Rick Green for governor. Should I respond to that?
Kara says no
Well, they don't know. I don't have
to
a
Rick Green for
microphone.
governor. However, we do have a choice for governor that we are hoping will run. I see people saying Chad Prather. I don't, look, I don't think Chad can win a race for governor. And I'm not sure that's the right answer for us. I mean, he's a nice guy and he's funny and all that, but I don't see him as a serious candidate for governor. I do think that Alan West is the man for the job. I think it's for such a time as this, Alan West for governor. And I would encourage you to write him, call him, beg him to run, and let him know you will back him with your dollars, with your time. If he runs, I am going to be willing to volunteer however much time he wants me, going out there and speaking for him and helping him and knocking on doors and everything else. He's the kind of guy we need for governor. And, so he's the one. Now, if Kara Green will run for lieutenant governor, then I will gladly help on that race too. Alan West and Kara Green.
I think that I'm trying to keep you right.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, right. Okay. What else? I appreciate y'all's encouragement, but rather than me running for something, I want you to become a Constitution coach. So that my job right now is to raise up 10,000 Constitution coaches across this country. And then you raise up candidates out of your Constitution classes to run for school board, city council, state legislature, eventually Congress, governor, lieutenant governor, Senate, all that good stuff right there in your state. So that's the plan right there. So
Well, our plan is we're going to have a Patriot Academy campus. We're going to be cranking out great pages.
that's right. And as we build our Patriot Academy campus, you can be a part of that. And we'll be cranking out good candidates to send home to you to be able to run for office soon. I think that's, I don't see anything else. What do you think, babe?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Ha! Nikki Haley for anything? How about Nikki Haley for nothing? I'm not supporting Nikki for anything.
Yeah, for those who wanting to move to Texas.
How do I start a Constitution class at my church? Don, go to biblicalcitizens.com. I'm going to put that in here. If any of my team's on tonight, if you'll also put that in there so that it shows up a couple of times. biblicalcitizens.com, and it's free. You can sign up and you can host that class at your church. You will have a great time. Go for it. Do it, do it.
How does it work? Somebody's asking, do you have to take a class to be a coach?
No, you sign up. We have all the training online, but let me tell you, it is this simple. You sign up, you create your class with our little dashboard that we give you. That gives you a web page. You send out a link to that web page to anybody you want to invite to come attend the class. When they go on that page, they register. Our back end takes care of everything. You're able to, the emails go to them to remind them of the class. You just pick the place, the date, the time, break out the coffee and donuts, and hit play. And you play the video for them. We do all the teaching in the video. Everybody that signs up for your class gets free access to the workbook. It's a digital workbook. And they can get a physical workbook if they want. But and then, you play the video, and then when the video's over, you talk with the class about what you learned in the video. It's that simple. You literally just have to do the power play. Hit power, and then hit play. And we'll do the rest for you. It's a great, great time of fellowship. So definitely host that class in your living room or at your home. If you go to FrontSight, you do not have to take your own gun. You can rent a gun. You do that through us. It's a lot less than doing it through them. We can set you up with that. So if you prefer that, you can take yours. So if you have one and you're flying, TSA is pretty easy to maneuver. And we'll tell you how to do that if you decide to do that. But you don't have to take one. You definitely can rent one. Okay. Anything else, Kara?
I think we're good.
Oh, I had somebody ask why I said Nikki Haley for nothing. Listen, Nikki Haley showed her true colors by throwing Donald Trump under the bus when she said we should not have ever followed him. And she acted like she literally bought the leftist lie that Donald Trump caused the damage at the Capitol, which it wasn't an insurrection. Think about it. An insurrection is whenever you burn cities night after night after night after night after night after night after night for months. And then if you bail out and contribute and get other people to contribute to bailing out the thugs that are rioting and burning down the city, that would be Vice President Kamala Harris. She did that. That should be impeachable. Okay, I'm all for that. Nikki Haley didn't have anything to say about that. Nikki Haley put her finger to the wind, and like a politician, she said, I think the Never Trumpers over at the National Review might support me if I say something terrible about Donald Trump. She was happy to follow him when he appointed her to be the secretary, our ambassador to the United Nations. And then, now when she saw the bad press and she saw the opportunity to be the anti-Trump candidate, she thinks she can be the nominee for president by dissing on Donald Trump. And think about this. That means either she was naive enough to be fooled by, what did I nickname the impeachment managers? Representative Rascal and Spywell. Yeah, she was fooled by the lies of Spywell and Rascal. And if she's that naive, she should be nobody's nominee for president. Or, more likely, she put her finger to the wind. She sold out like a lot of politicians do. And if that's the case, absolutely. She deserves to be the nominee of that little bitty group of never-Trumpers that are self-righteous and they did get tired of winning because they're natural-born losers. And they prefer to lose. It's kind of that Mitch McConnell, we'd rather be in the minority mentality. So that's the Nikki Haley that I'm saying I will not support for anything, and she showed that in the last 10 days. Listen, when you're in a battle that you're losing or appear to be losing, or you even if you're going down on a sinking ship and somebody turns on you at that point, that's not a person you ever want to support again. Somebody that'll go down on a sinking ship with you and stand by you, that's a person that in the future that's a patriot. That's somebody I want in the foxhole next to me, and that is not Nikki Haley.
And then have the audacity to try to request a meeting with them.
Yeah, and then had the audacity to try to request a meeting with Donald Trump. I was so glad. He said, nope. I was so glad. That was great. Yeah, she's a female Romney. That's basically what you got in Nikki Haley. So, okay. Yeah, I don't know, David. Pence for president. I mean, I think he'll be in the running. If Donald Trump doesn't run, which I think at this point Trump will run. We don't know what his health's going to be like in 4 years. We don't know all the other things he's going to do. I'm anxious to, looking forward to hearing his speech at CPAC. It's about the movement. It's not about any one man. But Donald Trump is the focal point. He does have the support, and he does have the backbone to say what needs to be said. So if he decides he wants to run again, I think he'll get it. I don't think there'll be it won't even be close. But if he doesn't, wow, man, look at the open field we're going to have. I mean, you're going to have Mike Pence. You're going to have, Nikki Haley will be in there, but more importantly, you're going to have Ron DeSantis, Kristi Noem. There's some really good ones. There aren't many, but there's some really good ones. And I would say those are the top two, in my opinion, Ron DeSantis and Kristi Noem. Pence would probably be my third choice. I like Mike Pence, but I don't think he has the I don't think he has what we need at this point. I think he was a fantastic vice president, but I think we're going to need a Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is probably the closest thing to the Trump, I don't care what the media thinks, I'm going to speak truth and let the chips fall where they may. But he has some of the better qualities that we all wish Trump had in terms of a little bit better at smoothing things over with people and, packaging the values a little bit better. I think Trump was exactly what we needed for the last 4 years and would have been what we needed for the next 4 years. But 4 years from now, different ballgame, and I think DeSantis may be the answer, or Kristi Noem. I mean, she is fantastic. So either one of those, and I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious what y'all think if there's anybody else on the national stage that you could see being as effective as them. I just think you have proven leadership in them, and that's what I want to know how somebody's going to lead when the entire media and frankly most of the nation is against them. When they know what's right and they're willing to do what's right, even when everybody's against them and they're being called grandma killer and everything else, and they still stand firm and they hold the line in that environment. If you go back to 2020 and you see the things they said about Kristi Noem and Ron DeSantis and the pressure they put on, not just from the national media, the local health officials, all these, fools that have gotten us into this situation that we're in, they were the ones putting the pressure on in their own states. When you're the governor of a state and these are the health professionals in your state telling you that you're wrong and this is going to kill all these people, but you're looking at the data and you're looking at the science and you're going, okay, I appreciate your opinion, but what you're saying is not reflected in the data. It's not reflected in the actual science. What you're saying is a scare tactic that people have bought in America, and they're living in fear. And you have the guts to move out with the truth and say no to that, man, that to me that's leadership. And that's what we need more of. And there's only 2 governors in the country that did that, and that's Kristi Noem and Ron DeSantis.
Agreed.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk. I can't see them running for president. I know people have thrown out Candace Owens running. I don't know. I think. I mean, I really believe you have to have run something of a big significance before you would be qualified for that position. And so, if you've been a governor of a big state or a small state, frankly, and you've had to run the operation of that state, or you've been in business and run businesses like Donald Trump had, I mean, the level of business, I mean, he ran businesses that had more employees than some of these states have citizens, right? I mean, not quite, but close, right? If you add up all of the Trump businesses and all of their employees, it would be like a small state. So as much as I love Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk, I mean, they haven't done anything like that. And even as,
She's filling a void right now.
Yeah, we need them right where they are. I mean, I think Charlie Kirk's spot on in most of the stuff he says. Candace Owens, same thing. I mean, their voices are needed. And I'm afraid they would lose a lot of the cultural impact that they're having if they turned around and ran. So, yeah, I think exactly right. Candace just had a baby, and she's with the Daily Wire, and she's got a bright, bright future, and running for president would derail that. Okie dokie.
Somebody asked me to close out in prayer.
I would be glad to do that. Lord, thank you for this porch. I thank you for this fire behind me that's nice and warm. I thank you for all of these folks on the live tonight. Thank you for just the country we live in. And Lord, I pray for mercy. I pray for wisdom, discernment, courage. I pray for courage in our leaders. I pray you would just infuse them with the wisdom to make the right decisions and the courage to stand by that, no matter what the media or the left or the quote-unquote experts have to say. God, I pray for just the light to shine on all of the deception and the lies that are out there right now. Lord, let our people awaken and see through all of these lies about COVID, about critical race theory, about the election. I just pray for light. Lord, let us be that salt and light. I pray that everybody that's on this Facebook Live tonight or watching the Front Porch Live from Rumble or one of the other social media platforms, Lord, I just pray that they would have a desire to start a Constitution class in their home or at their church, whether they do Constitutional Live or the Biblical Citizenship class, or they come out with us and do Constitutional Defense, that they would take a step, take action tonight, put it on their heart to do something and not just sit back and complain, but do something. Thank you, Lord, that there's things we can do, that we don't have to throw up our hands and say, there's nothing I can do, it's all lost. Lord, don't let us be blinded by that lie. But instead, Lord, let us embrace the fact that we have a duty right in front of us. There are things we can do right in our neighborhoods, in our communities, online. Father, there's so much we can do. And I just thank you that Patriot Academy exists and is growing and is giving people that outlet to be involved. I pray that more and more people, Father, will sign up and get engaged. And just pray you'll give us wisdom. Lord, I pray you'll bring the right people to our team, the right donors that'll make it possible for us to do all the things you've laid before us. And I thank you for everybody that's watching tonight, that they would be a part of that they would give of their life, their fortune, and their sacred honor to help save our nation. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All righty. We good?
We're good. Any last words?
Mom, any last words? All right, God bless you guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Sunday right here on the Front Porch.